Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Daily Fan Racing NASCAR DFS preview show. This week, we are talking about Atlanta, and I'm joined, as always, by my two wonderful co hosts. Not as good looking, but they're still here. But speaking of good looking, we got ourselves a fourth member this week. We have Dan from the Fantasy Alarm. Welcome to the show, and please tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, Dan Malin from fantasyalarm.com. Follow me on Twitter at RealDanLanta, RealDanLanta. Fairly excited to talk Atlanta this week. It is, I guess, my home track. Get spoiled with two races here every year. Not a big fan of what they've done to the track in the last 18 months, but just excited to break it down with you, Ryan and Jason.
For sure. And we are bringing on the Atlanta man himself to break it down. But before we do so, we do have some old races to talk about. We'd have last week's, and for some it was good, for some it wasn't. Let's talk about it here. Ryan, we'll pass it over to you first. How was your experience last week at Phoenix, and what were your overall thoughts about it?
It's weird. I saw a lot of negative reaction to the race, but I actually enjoyed it. And I can't tell if that's because I made money on it or not. It's one of those races where you have a shot at the optimal literally the entire race, and you're just kind of sitting there, you're going back and forth, so you kind of have that excitement going. But aside from Larson and Byron kind of stinking up the show, I thought from third on back it was kind of entertaining. We had drivers moving through the field like hard. We had things we can watch and follow, and I thought it was a decent race. We learned more on the year. That was our first short track, so to speak. So we learned a lot from it. And to me, it wasn't that bad of a race. I thought it was a big improvement over last year. So overall, I enjoyed it, and I got to make a little money, which never hurts.
That's always the best part about it, indeed. Jason, what about yourself? How was Phoenix for you?
I'll agree with him from an entertainment standpoint. It was a decent race, but it was. I got bad beat all around. It felt like at Phoenix. Phoenix was not very kind to me at the end. Obviously, everybody knew I was in love with Kevin Harvick, so I had that bet right, and I also had bet on Kyle Larson at plus 900. So I thought, closing laps there, the way the race is shaping out, you think it's in the bag. How is this race going to be ruined for me, right? Late race caution. You guys know how it ended, right? But not only that, DFS day was kind of ruined, going 100% Almirola. That didn't work out too well, obviously, going but I think I was without you got about, it was one of those weeks where you get about as much right as you can possibly get and still lose money. So just didn't shake out right for me.
And just so we're clear on this, Jason screwed himself. With about 30 to go, he was talking about the closer and tweeting out about he was already catching his slips before the race was even over. So it's his own fault. He knows better, and he got what he deserved.
I do that shit all the time.
Yeah, personally, I actually played more NASCAR DraftKings lineups than I have ever, and it worked out okay. It doesn't Almirola, and honestly, I was doing really well until the end. I had Hamlin in a bunch of them. I had Harvick too, which, what, things happen. But Dan, what about yourself? How did last week go for you?
It was profitable, which was nice because I didn't do very well in the Xfinity race. It seems like I never really catch a good break on the Xfinity race. Phoenix was actually the first time, I guess we're 4 races in. It was the first time I played cash last week, and cash games were pretty much the reason I was able to stay afloat. First time that I felt comfortable with a cash lineup that I felt good about, entering in about, I don't know, I guess 80% of what I spent last week. So cash games were good last week. I had Harvick, I had Larson in the same lineup. They were over 80% owned in those contests, but having nice little leverage pivots like Bubba Wallace, who after his pit stop, I was really worried about for most of stage 3 because I was flirting with that cash line. But the chaos between Hamlin and Chastain on the final lap, Hamlin admittedly putting Chastain in the wall, that helped my Bubba Wallace shares a little bit in cash games. So I was able to sit pretty at the end of the day and, turn a nice little profit for the second straight week.
There we go. And this is something you guys won't hear me do ever, but I got to give Ryan his props. I was sitting there Sunday morning, sitting with my best friend who just came out of surgery, and he's like, I want to bet on NASCAR. So I'm like, I'll just text up Ryan. He doesn't really post any betting content. You like any of these? he went 5 for 5. So I do have some change things with Ryan. I won't usually be nice to him, but I do owe him after last week. So hopefully we can do it again. But let's break down Atlanta. And I think there's no better way to preview this track and what we do expect than to Mr. Atlanta himself. Dan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, Atlanta used to be, it's still the same, mile-and-a-half tri-oval configuration that, we see with so many other tracks like Charlotte, Texas, Kansas. But, with the new configuration, it's a complete repave. There's doesn't have the tire wear that we're used to seeing. The corners got rebanked from 24 degrees to 28 degrees. Now, you'll hear a lot of people talk about, how you should expect super speedway racing. I don't like applying super speedway terms to Atlanta. I do think you're perfectly fine, using terms like drafting and things like that, and still using Daytona and Talladega as comps in terms of, lineup construction. But typically the two races we saw last year, the wrecks weren't as big. You don't tend to get as big of a run here in Atlanta as you would with Daytona or Talladega. I think that, it might be a little bit more difficult to pass, in my opinion. Now that could easily vary, but we've only seen 2 races here. But the one big difference is that, we can see one person truly lead a ton of laps here. We were talking about this before we went live. I love going into mile-and-a-half races with like a 2 or 3 Dominator build, but Atlanta is so different in the fact that they will be kind of sort of pack racing. They will be drafting, but it won't be entirely surprising, completely different from Daytona and Talladega, where we see one guy maybe go out there and lead 70, 80, 90, maybe 100 laps. And so, it's a super speedway hybrid, in my opinion. It's on an intermediate track. It's a really interesting, new setup. We only have 2 races, very small sample size. Can't wait to see, what we get this weekend.
For sure. And Jason, I heard Dan say a lot of things about comparisons to Daytona. How does this compare in terms of track style? And are there a lot of DNFs because of it?
Yeah, this is definitely a hybrid track like he mentioned, but the one thing it does have in common with those super speedways, specifically Daytona, is if you think of this as a mini Daytona, we saw the same amount of chaos and carnage that you would expect at Daytona. In both races at Atlanta last year, we had 11 cautions and 13 cautions for a total of 24 in both races. Both races, we ran over 20% of the race under caution. If you look at cars who did not finish, we had 12 cars not DNF the first race, 11 cars DNF the second race. And it's crazy that we had 23 and 21 cars on the lap, which is a lot more than what we typically see at Daytona. But I think we got lucky, guys. I think if you think about it, the number of incidences we saw, if you look at the amount of cars involved in instances, we had 25 and 27 cars involved in incidences. I think we got lucky and just didn't see the attrition we would see. We didn't just happen to have cars grouped together at the right time to create that big one. I think it's coming. I still expect a lot of attrition. I think we could get to the end of this race and see 12 cars at the end like what we see at Daytona.
Okay, and then Ryan, to you, if it is so much like this super speedway hybrid, do we stack the back? How do we target this? What is your personal opinion on how we are playing this slate?
So there is viability in playing those back markers. The BJ McLeod, Cody Ware, David Reagan was obviously a fan favorite last year. He crushed it on this style of racing, but there's a caveat to that. This track, because it's a mile and a half, because there is some more setup based advantages for teams. Your higher quality teams are going to outperform a lot better, if that makes sense. Basically, they're going to have a bigger advantage here, and they're going to be able to hold their position a lot better. And this track is so much harder to pass on than a Daytona or Talladega. It's really set up for the only way these guys can really improve their position is through the carnage, which at Daytona and Talladega, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they can actually do it on track. Once the field kind of thins out, they can make some moves. That's the first thing. The second thing is the second race last year saw all of those guys involved in a wreck. So the Cody Wares, the Garrett Smithleys, the BJ McLeod finished last. So you have to be careful with that mindset, because literally the last race here, all of them were involved in an incident. And the highest finishing one was Cody Ware, finishing 23rd, and he was in an incident himself. So I think there's maybe a case to be made for applying that strategy to some lineups. The spring race, we saw some of those guys finish 15th, 16th, 18th, that range. But you got to be very careful because I don't see that top 10 upside. I don't see that huge, like 7th place Landon Castle finish or something like that. I think it's more of the 18th, 19th place finish. And then also there's the opportunity for them to be involved in incidents as well. So I'm a little less gung-ho on the stack the back mindset. I think you have to be pretty even out. I think you maybe plug in 1 or 2 of those guys, but it's not like Daytona. I think my lineup, I think I played 6 drivers all starting 34th on back. And that was an easy lineup to plug in, and it made a lot of money. But I don't think that's the type of lineup construction you need to do for this race. I think you really have to hit, I know we got on Dominators, but I think you got to hit 1 or 2 of those type guys. Then you got to hit some good, middle of the road place differential guys like a Eric Almirola who starts 20th and finishes 5th. And that's just shooting fish in a barrel almost in this type of race. But that's kind of where I think you have to build your lineup. So it's less about like, hey, I'm going to really hammer these guys starting in the back, and more about being a little bit more strategic.
But what about like in cash though? In cash, you're still going to stack the back though, right? I mean,
it depends. I mean, I guess what happens with qualifying, right? But I mean, there's some
when I say stack the back, right? Cash games, at least the way I play cash games in super speedways, right, is like I'm playing the 6 furthest back non-back marker guys, right? The six farthest guys who are not in those not in the back marker guys are the guys who I'm typically playing in my cash lineup. Like, I think that's still the right strategy.
Yeah, I'm not
for this week.
I'm playing the back markers at Daytona. I'm playing the BJ McLeods and the Cody Wares, and I'm letting them get me my 17th place finish at Daytona. I'm probably not doing that this week. And again, qualifying is a big part of that. Where certain guys line up is a big part of that. Obviously, if we get some really good drivers starting at the back, that strategy will change. Whereas if we don't have that and they all line up based off of merit, then maybe I'm more apt to play those drivers in a cash lineup. But I don't, literally at Daytona, I don't think I had a quality driver in the damn thing in the lineup. I think there are similarities to Daytona, but I don't think it's a huge.
Well, I mean, Daytona, we had Daytona, right? We had Jimmy Johnson, we had Travis Pastrana. I wouldn't consider those guys in back marker cars. So you had those 2 guys, and then
Travis
you had Ricky
Pastrana.
Stenhouse back there. Whatever I say, Pastrami, whatever his name is. But I think you had a different option. But yeah, I get that point. I mean, I understand your point, but I still don't think you're starting guys starting inside the top 20. Are you this week? I mean.
No,
and maybe you
are. No,
you
got to be very, very strategic about that. Okay. Yes.
So you still got stack in the back.
Well, let's talk about it then. First off, before we do, shout out to everybody hanging out in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions you have there. They'll be sure to answer it. Andrew's talking about Dominators. He said he's going to set a rule at most 2 from the top 12 to try to get that 1 Dominator. How are you guys targeting Dominators? Ryan, we'll go right back to you. We talked about you not wanting to stack the back necessarily, but Dominators, how are you playing them? What is your overall lineup construction looking like?
So this is where it gets tricky. Last year, and I know Jason's going to kind of pinpoint this in a minute, but last year our Dominators all hit. They didn't crash out. They didn't have issues. We basically saw them deliver the finishes they deserved. William Byron won the race he should have won. Chase Elliott starting first won the race he should have won. Ross Chastain starting second in that same race, finished second, delivered the finish he should have got. So that's very normal. That's not what you would expect at any of these tracks, Daytona here, whatever. You would expect them to kind of get caught up in some sort of incident. But even with Corey LaJoie, when he got wrecked out late last year, he was the top 5 car, one of the best cars. And if he didn't make the move he made, he would have finished up at the front 2, right? So we weren't seeing the leaders crash each other. Whereas I think it was the 3rd place running position at Daytona was the most dangerous, right? Literally the 3rd place driver wrecked more than any other position at Daytona, which then led to everyone else behind him crashing out. That didn't play out last year at this track. So I don't know if we should plan for that to start playing out. With the 2 race sample size, we don't know what to really trust, I guess, basically. But, I think I want a couple of Dominators. I want those guys that are going to have elite cars that can go out there and hold the lead, because it is very hard to pass the leader here. If you can get the lead and hug the bottom and have a car where you don't have to lift or anything, you're just going to go hold the lead. It's very hard to pass the leader. So I loved what Byron did last year, where he drove through the field, crushed everybody, looked like the best guy. Chase Elliott, teammate, did the same thing. Ross Chastain was great both races. I think that same type of thing could play out. The issue is, like Jason's going to get to in a second, if they crash, then it changes the whole ball game. But based off of 2 races, we want at least one Dominator, if not 2 of them.
All right, Jason, get right to it. What was that you're going to pinpoint here, and how are you personally targeting your lineup construction?
No, just personally from what I see, and like what I'm seeing is I'm seeing everybody taking that same approach. They're looking at last year and like, oh, how big those Dominator points are. When they were important last year, right? If you look at the Dominator points scored, they scored 30 and they scored 25 Dominator points. Yeah, that's good points if they finish, right? If they don't wreck out, and they didn't wreck out last year. I mean, who's to say green, white, checker, their ass don't get spun this week, I mean, so if we saw 20 cars finish on the lap last year, that's 40 points down right there. Those Dominator points mean nothing. And I think if you're going to lean into the fact that this is going to be chaotic, like at least for me, if I know people are now gravitating to the front of the field to chase those Dominator points and those guys are going to draw ownership, let them, because I promise most of those guys are going to fail and or probably be a lot of negative lineups. And I'm going to play really safe this week, play guys from the back. Take a nice profit and move on to next week because like I don't know who's going to win. Like I don't know who that Dominator is going to be. You guys can chase them, but like you might as well play the lottery, in my opinion.
Sure, Mr. Atlanta. What about you? What is your target like this week?
It's really going to depend on how qualifying shakes out. We're not getting practice for any series this week. We're just getting qualifying for all 3 series, and honestly, it looks like Truck and Xfinity could be rained out. So it's looking like we might only get qualifying for the Cup Series. So I'll have a much more concrete answer, once we know like who is starting where, who's in the top 10 that I think can go out there and, fight for stage points in stage 1. And then I think in stage 2, they're probably just content maybe running just single file, which is by far the most boring version of racing ever. But, we saw Chase Elliott lead 96 laps here in the second race last year. William Byron led 111 laps in his win at this race a year ago. And we saw plenty of other drivers lead 42 laps from Ross Chastain in the first race, 29 laps from Chase Elliott in the first race. So, the laps led can be distributed evenly. But where this track still draws comparisons to super speedways is that the fastest laps are still, kind of dispersed evenly throughout the field. So it's like when we talk about, if we're just going off the 2 race sample size from last year and we talk about, Dominator points, we're really just talking about laps led. And if we're only talking about laps led as the Dominator points for this race, those are only, 0.25 points per lap, whereas the fastest laps are 0.45. Typically on most races, whether it's short track, standard, intermediates, typically your Dominators, they're collecting laps led and fastest laps, but we're talking about a track right now where, we have to dilute this definition of Dominator points to just laps led because the fastest laps are going to pretty much everybody that's, in the draft. So it's going to be really hard if we're going to get the same kind of racing than last year where we just get one guy that really stands out that's collecting a ton of laps. So, in a GPP, you're going to need that one guy, maybe 2 guys if the script for the races this year is different. But, I'm not going to weigh Dominator points heavily until I start building my lineup on Sunday.
And to piggyback off that real quick, I wrote down there's 9 drivers that led over 20 laps in the 2 races. So, it's not a guarantee that anyone will lead 100 laps or 80 laps. It could easily be, 6 or 7 guys in this race lead 20 or 30 laps, and it's kind of broken up that way. So I think it's and again, like really easy to sit there and say Hendrick Motorsports again with Kyle Larson, William Byron, that group's just going to go out there and kick everyone's ass again like they did last year and like they've done so far this year. I think that's going to be the popular mindset, but we don't know that yet. And there should be some leverage ability off that. To Jason's point, fading the idea of playing Dominators and fading the popular guys and then going elsewhere. I think there is some validity to that.
But even again, it's like, when we talk about guys that led 20, 30, 40 laps, those points in terms of DFS scoring, those equate to 5, 6, 7, 8 points. So if they do wreck, like Jason's referring to, and they go backward, those Dominator points, those laps, they just don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And HMS don't got no louvers anymore, right? Those are gone. So good luck with that.
Sure.
Okay.
Go on, Gordo.
I want to get to some fun stuff here too. Like I've been waiting for this the whole show. Now we're 20 minutes in. Let's get into a game show. And I don't have any really fun game show music to play in the background, but we're gonna put through this and we're gonna talk about who we think are going to win the race or have the lowest total combined finishing position. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a snake draft style. Each contestant is gonna pick 4 drivers. We have four contestants this week. Is that music playing in the background?
I got just intro music, man.
All right, not bad. We can play it while the picks are going on. But 4 contestants, we have Ryan, Dan, Jason, and a special guest that will be the 4th pick this week. We'll disclose a bit later. But like I said, snake draft, you are looking for the lowest total combined finishing position. So it is before qualifying. It is a bit of a risky one. But Dan, you are a guest. You will start first. Who is your first overall pick for someone you think is going to have a low position this week?
And this is just finishing position, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to take Christopher Bell.
Christopher Bell.
Doesn't have the finishes that we wanted to see from a year ago. I believe he finished 23rd. But, you know, if you look at his average running position in the first race, I think it was 11th. You know, still finished on the lead lap, led 16 laps last year. I want to say he had an issue in the first race. I know for a fact he got disqualified in the second race after he finished second. You know, Toyota manufacturer, I actually like on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think they're plus 290 to win the race. And I know there's only 6 of them in the race. So, like, you know, as far as win equity goes, they're not great. But I do want some Christopher Bell, especially if he's going to be running in tandem with the likes of Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick. I want some Christopher Bell.
Yeah.
All right, and Jason. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, to Dan's point about Bell, you know, he was running second. He got that penalty for passing below the yellow line, and that's what you know. It made me a lot of money. Thank you. But it was a situation where he was one of the top 3 cars there at the end of the race, and he was a great play. So it should not go overlook how he ran there.
Yeah,
Okay,
I like the
Jason.
bell call too there. I like the bell call, especially when you look at Daytona. Like if you look at average running position at Daytona, it was all Fords and Toyotas up there, which is exactly why for number 1 pick, I'm taking Ross Chastain, the watermelon man in the show. Of course I'm taking Ross Chastain. Come on, man. The king of super speedways. You guys know I love him. Big watermelons. Give me Ross Chastain. Come on. He's going to win a super speedway at some point this year, so I'm just going to pick him every goddamn one.
All right, I like that call, man. You love that melon, man, and you did my job. You segued right into it. Ryan, we will give you the 3rd pick, though. We will make you go last.
Easy. This is the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. We already know the way we should be going with this pick. You know, he's over there picking Chastain. He is a subpar version of the driver I'm about to pick.
Oh no,
Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Oh, God.
The best plate racer out there, super speedway racer, whatever you want to say. That's the man I'm going with. I appreciate it, Jason, for not taking him. Next up.
All right. Well, here's the fun part, guys, because
second.
yeah, no, I don't mind that rivalry you guys going there, but this is the fun part here because we all know that I am not competent enough to go out here and give you guys picks. So we bring in a special guest. We have ourselves the wheel. We have the wheel of winners this week, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna spin it, and that's gonna be my 4 contestant. If it loses, well, I blame it on the wheel. If it wins, this is my team right here. Okay, guys, let's remember that. We're gonna spin it here first. As you can tell, the practice went to Almond Digger. Let's see how it goes here. We're spinning the wheel.
While it's spinning, you guys can all go to my Twitter at DFS NASCAR. You can find my tweet. I have a link. You guys can spin the wheel yourself and build your lineups this week.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, great. Well, guess what? The wheel gets back-to-back picks as well because it is a snake draft, right? So we're gonna do it again, and then you guys can tell me what you think about those thoughts as well. All right. Uh-oh. These are not the highest level drivers. That's okay.
My God.
Oh,
That's
my
another
God.
Yeah, we're losing.
God, wheel of winners is.
We're losing here.
Okay, let's break this down then. Ryan, you have the next pick. Tell me about what the wheel just chose, and then who are you going to take as your 2nd overall?
So the wheel just chose Ryan Blaney in a Penske car. You know, let's face it, Ryan Blaney's been one of the top 5 or 6 super speedway racers for the past 5 years. He's amazing. The cars will be fast. He'll be a contender to win for sure. And then Corey LaJoie was right there on the verge of winning here last year. Crashed out on the last lap, I believe. In the first race, he finished fifth. Phenomenal super speedway racer, and they pretty much let him go here at Atlanta. They say, hey, go show what you're made of, and he took it to the front both races and was an elite play. So you literally, if you picked drivers, you can't pick better than that. So,
I would not have picked them.
So that's fantastic. But I feel pretty fortunate now that we've gone through 5 drivers and we haven't touched Hendrick Motorsports. So I'm going to go ahead and take the chalk. I'm going to take the fastest cars on the track last year here and so far this year. Let's go for a three-peat. 3 in a row here. William Byron, he's going to get himself another Atlanta win. That's who I'm going with. I think he's got the goods this week.
All right. You going to follow suit there, Jason, or who is your second pick going to be?
Yeah, I will say that the wheel maybe reached a little bit on Corey LaJoie. He probably could have waited a little bit for Corey LaJoie. I will say that. But I am going to take a veteran, an esteemed super speedway racer. When we look at this team, when we talk about Fords, they were fast at Daytona. This team, they're average running position, tied for second, both of them, Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski. I'm going to take the veteran Brad Keselowski here. Yeah, I don't really have much more to add. He's fast, and he's a good super speedway guy, and he's going to be there. And I like rooting for the veteran, so.
All right. Well, Dan's got back-to-back picks here, picks 2 and 3. Floor is yours.
With back-to-back picks, I'm actually going to go a little bit off the wall. I think you'll all agree that I'm probably reaching on both of these drivers, but they are cheap on DraftKings this week, and they are from the same team. I'm going to take both Colleague Racing drivers with Justin Haley and AJ Allmendinger. Haley had some very good runs here a year ago, finished 11th in the first race. I'm trying to see where he 7th in the second race. Allmendinger won a super speedway drafting race last year in the Xfinity Series. He's now full-time in the Cup Series. We got to throw it back all the way to Justin Haley's phenomenal 2020 season in the Xfinity Series when he won 3 of the 4 super speedway or drafting races between Daytona and Talladega. 2 very good super speedway or drafting drivers right here. And there's plenty of Chevys that they can work with. They'll be pitting together in this race, I imagine. And so I still expect both of these drivers to finish pretty well as long as they stay clean.
All right. Teammates there. All right. Jason, you got Chastain and Keselowski. Who is your third pick going to be?
I'm going to go Kyle Busch. He was laps away from winning the Daytona 500. Yeah, these cars are fast on super speedways, the RCR cars. He's had a lot of speed on the intermediates. Yeah, I'm going to get Kyle Busch.
Okay. Ryan, you got Stenhouse and Byron. Who's your third pick going to be?
So I'm going to go a little bit safer with this one. I think I want to rack up some points, hope that my guy kind of stays out of trouble, someone who may ride in the back and hang out and relax. And but also has the ability to get a killer finish if things go well, and that's going to be Michael McDowell.
Ooh. Okay.
So I'm it's not a glorious pick. It's not going for the win, but I'm hoping for a nice solid finish to give me some points while these guys get those crashy drivers like Keselowski and those guys that are going to get in wrecks. I got someone that's going to kind of hide in the back, wait for those wrecks to happen, and then spring towards the front late.
All right. Well, the wheel's got something to say about
the wheel
that.
pick it out.
You're damn straight.
Let's bring him back up here. He's got back-to-back picks to end it out, actually. For picks 3 and 4. First up, we have Austin Dillon.
Oh, another good one.
Okay. For the final pick for the wheel this week.
Speedway, right?
My final pick. Sorry. Let's get this. If it's good, it's mine, right? In the final one this week.
This has to be good television, right? Or good YouTubing. I think this is
Amarola.
Jesus.
Oh my gosh, that is a
Okay. So now the wheel now has Blaney,
it's like a GPP Core 4.
Dillon,
It
and
really
Almirola.
is.
Yeah, Eric Almirola had the number 1 average position rank at Daytona. He was a stud. He was there. Speed. But
I was expecting you to be mad at him. Yeah.
I am. As I just said, I'm not touching him again. So.
Okay. Well, Ryan, you have your final pick here with Stenhouse, Byron, and McDowell. Who is your fourth and final?
Let's go with the driver shafted last week, Kevin Harvick. You know, I know this isn't old Atlanta. I know this isn't the type of track he's hoping for when he shows up here, but still a very veteran savvy driver who makes good decisions, who should have a fast car. And I hope he has the ability to get to the front, get up there, and possibly win. So I like Kevin Harvick. I'm hoping that he can use that endless amount of knowledge he has to deliver a good finish for us.
All right, Jason, your fourth and final.
Yeah, I cannot believe he's lasted this long and made it all the way here. I mean, this guy's probably a guaranteed lock for the lowest score of the week, right? Hometown boy, won here last year. Give me Chase Elliott, guaranteed lock for 0 points. Boom!
This just in. We're disqualifying that. Try again.
Okay, I guess give me Denny Hamlin. Give me Denny Hamlin.
You know what? Ballsy, though. I like that one. It took me a second, too, but all right. Denny Hamlin. Dan, the final pick of the draft.
I do want a little bit of lineup theory here, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to go with one of the best drafters, I think, and a fellow Toyota to go with Christopher Bell. So I'm going to take Bubba Wallace, finished 14th here after starting 32nd in the second race. He finished 13th here after starting 19th. So I'm taking Bubba Wallace.
All right, and that concludes the draft for this week. Dan has Bell, Haley, Allmendinger, and Wallace. Jason has Chastain, Keselowski, Busch, Hamlin. Ryan has Stenhouse, Byron, McDowell, and Harvick. And the Wheel of Destiny has Blaney, LaJoie, Austin Dillon, and Almirola. With that, guys, that is 31 minutes into breaking down Atlanta. I'm going to give you guys the floor for your final thoughts. We have already talked about lineup construction, a fun little drafting game here. So while these guys give you their plugs where they can find them and their final thoughts on this race, please hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. We'll start with our guest here, Dan. Where can they find you, and what is your overall thoughts on the race this weekend?
They can find me at fantasyalarm.com. You can follow me on Twitter at RealDanLanta at RealDanLanta. Final thoughts. Honestly, it's a small sample size for this kind of race. We think it runs like a super speedway with the drafting, but there's still one dominator. And I try to say this every week to any of my subscribers or any of my friends that reach out. Play an amount of money, especially on a race like this, that you're comfortable losing. Because at the end of the day, we're going to look back at the optimal lineup and we're going to say, like, I would have never thought about playing that lineup. You're going to leave salary on the table for a race like this. So, we had more predictable races like Fontana, Vegas, Phoenix. Next week's Coda. It's next week's a very good race to really just play PD and just hope for the best finishers. This race, I'm still not completely sold that we know what exactly is going to happen. So truly, be disciplined with the bankroll this week, whether that's just doing one lineup or 20 lineups and just throwing it in the happy hour, which is $1.20 max, just don't go all in on this race. And I'm saying this as someone who lives in Atlanta and will be at the races this weekend.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure not only meeting you, but hearing from you this week. Best of luck and enjoy watching them live. Jason, we're going to throw it over to you again. Where can they find you, your overall thoughts? And we'll actually give you an extra job. John is asking, who's got the chalk? Ask that as well.
Who's got the chalk? I don't know. It's hard to tell who's going to be the chalk so far. Kyle Larson is supposedly like the odds-on favorite to win if you look at every sportsbook and where DraftKings has him priced at. But no, ditto to everything Dan said here. Thanks for joining Dan as well, because I've known Dan, it seems like forever now. It's nice to actually have you on and do some stuff with you. But as far as this weekend, ditto to everything he said. Cash is going to be king this weekend is the kind of approach I'm going. I'm kind of playing it pretty conservative, probably pretty safe. And just from there, just have fun with it. I'm expecting chaos. Another bit of advice I would say, if I'm going to be this invested in that this chaos is going to be happening, most likely it's going to be like a long green flag and single file race. So maybe lean into that strategy, because if I put it all out here that it's going to be chaos, it's probably going to be a pretty green flag race. That's typically how things go. But find me at DFS NASCAR. You guys can find my content every weekend at Run Pure Sports.
And last but not least, Ryan Larkin from Daily Fan Racing. Let them know where they can find you and what other work you have this week, because I hear you're a busy man.
Yeah, this weekend's going to be hell for me. We got maybe we got 2 races on Saturday. We got Xfinity trucks, and then we have F1 and Cup on Sunday afternoon. So a lot of content going on. We're looking for our, to go 2 for 2 on F1 takedowns this year, which is no surprise. I think we had like 4 or 5 takedowns last year. We're planning on winning a lot of those this year. So we'll have that full slate broken down. We'll have the Cup stuff broken down. We'll have literally just about every type of content you can have. Obviously, we're paired with the solver, so you can use the optimizer over there. We got a link you can sign up through and get you set up where my projections, if you're on my site and there, projections go straight there as well. And then lastly, something I like doing occasionally, a couple times a year, is I have a customer appreciation or subscriber appreciation contest. Basically, anyone who's subscribed to the site this week, whether it's weekly, monthly, yearly, can enter a contest. First place will win some money and a hat like this. And second, we'll win some money as well. I need to get you guys some hats too. They're coming. I just placed a big order of hats, so they're coming. But run a little contest just to say thanks for everybody, and then and we'll do that a couple more times this year. So that's going to be available on the site as well. So look out for that. And that's it. That's all I got.
Perfect. Well, to all 12 of you guys watching live right now, feel free to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. To everyone watching after the fact, do the same thing, but also show some love to these 3 amazing guests and co-hosts along with me here. If you guys are looking for any NASCAR knowledge or F1, really, any racing, these are the guys to go to. Not really me, but if you are looking to follow me, you know what? At Gambles Gordo on Twitter. If you want some MMA stuff, I'm your guy. And I will be learning. Me and the wheel are going to be spending time in, time out together, looking at how to beat you guys. And I look forward to kicking your ass with an object like the wheel at my side. So I appreciate everybody for joining us this week. Appreciate Dan for making the appearance, and wish everybody the best of luck on all your contests this weekend. Enjoy the races. Let's make some money, guys. Peace.